So one of the questions that came up in the presentation that you gave was from a very wise soul who asked about the connection between spiritual resilience and political resistance. That is such a huge topic, but can you speak to that for just a couple of minutes?
Well, first and foremost, let me acknowledge that that is a huge topic. I was so excited when the young man asked that question and was only regretted that we didn't have more time to get into it at that presentation. But spiritual resilience and political resistance are intricately connected. And you can see that in the lives of so many world leaders who have gone against the grain of the day to make changes for an entire globe. I think of Gandhi, I think of Dr. King, I think of people like Fannie Lou Hamer, even Bayard Rustin, who was the architect of the 1963 March on Washington. I think of Malcolm X. There are so many others, even people in the secular realm, who have had to draw from a place within them that had to be that place of core spiritual values, beliefs, understanding of who they are in the world and what it means to be a person in the world, to then be able to project forth these values that often went against what authorities were saying. And in each of those cases, there is a resistance that happens, but there's also a progression that comes out of that. And I would love to be able to have more detailed conversations, for instance, looking at some of these examples, looking at their early years, looking even at the lives of the people who mentored them to see what was it that built such a strong spiritual resistance that in most cases caused them to be willing to risk their life for the good of the world. So yes, they're hugely, hugely connected.
There's a dissertation there, right?
I came from in South Korea and 30 years ago, and what is the contribution of my faith, Christianity, to the whole world history? We contributed to the education system, hospitals, and all kind of charities and great things. Um, uh, however, actually, out of this, what happened is that Christianity went to somewhere people are more oppressed in the poverty, uneducated, and it brings very political tension immediately, because for the people who have a hegemonic power, the my faith coming in, and then they reach those who are oppressed and in poverty and uneducated, right? And for the goodwill, right?
Which
And
and
but
just to interrupt you for a second, that's what Jesus did.
Yeah.
This is
yeah,
modeling what was where our tradition came from in the first place. But yeah,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's why I follow Jesus. We were in a very huge, normally the Buddhists, all the kind of Confucianism, we have a lot of diversity there, but that I appreciated. And then actually we had a lot of protest against the dictatorship when I was growing up. My college age was filled with the protest, what we saw in the summer in our countries. And then our faith was a humongous support and backbone of that. And that we maybe Dr. Scott gonna be surprised how many times we sang the "We Shall Overcome" in South Korea. Why are they do this? That because that's the thing, that because it was not about my religion, it's about the oppression and resist against the dictatorship, because we totally believe that's God's will. That liberation and liberate, I'm not talking about liberation theology, which I love, but anyway, they're just kind of the liberating and freeing my people. That's the main theme, isn't it? And so, and then with that, actually, out of all this, we made huge progress in democracy in Korea while I was in college. Out of 30 years of political resistance, with a lot of them were, our faith in Christians. And we made a humongous progress. So the government allowed finally the national election instead of just some other system to have a practice dictatorship. That really made my life totally different because I felt like, wow, I never thought our young people, we don't have anything, we don't have any power, but we can change. We can change the destiny of the nation, right? We don't have any weapon like police or the arm, the soldiers, or we don't have much power like millionaires. We just go out the street and we just shout and we just protest. But we never knew it gonna bring more attention from all people, whole nation, followed, and we made a history there. And that's what I brought in America, So I love to really encourage that the people have a very critical thinking, and then also very involved with the politics, not for your own interest or not for your own and power for your own sake, but the sake of God's will on this nation, for the sake of the common good on this nation, for the sake of justice on this nation, for the sake of liberating those who are oppressed, right? And so to me, actually, the political resistance and then spiritual resilience is highly correlated. And that's one of part of my story and testimony. So I really think, as Dr. Scott said, it's a huge topic. And but also it's so related and even very resonant to today, today's our nation. So I appreciate that question a lot, and I hope that we can continue dialogue in the future.
I want to just add that the reason I did not mention Jesus, I'm a follower of Jesus as well. I don't believe the word political relates to Jesus. I believe if we say radical resistance, we would bring Jesus into that fold, because Jesus was not political. He was radical in the root sense of the word, radix, which means he really got to the very core
Yes.
of not only spiritual issues, not only political issues, but moral issues, relational issues, every type of issue that man could ever experience. And so I think we could also say, if we're going to add Jesus to this mix, that spiritual resistance or resilience is tied to radical resistance. Spiritual resilience is intricately connected to radical resistance. Because I don't want to leave without saying that, because I've never believed that Jesus is political. The magnitude of his impact on the globe was so much bigger than that.
It transcends the idea of Jesus being political, and with radix being related to root. It's really the root of the entire universe, the entire world, that transformative vision.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. A great question.
Thank you.